Hello students, today we are going to study the lesson The Adventure of the Dying Detective, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a Scottish doctor who inherited the love for writing and books from his mother. His first story was published when he was 20. He is best known for his Sherlock Holmes stories, who is known for his skill at logical reasoning and his ability to disguise himself. Most Sherlock Holmes stories are set in London and narrated by Holmes' friend, Dr. John Watson. He modeled the character of Sherlock Holmes on his former professor. Apart from short stories and novels on crime, Doyle also wrote historical novels, romances, and plays. Now let's have a look at the characters in the story. We have Holmes, Dr. Watson, Culverton Smith, who has killed his nephew Victor Savage, Inspector Morton, and Mrs. Hudson. She's the landlady of Holmes. Now, let's watch the animated video of this lesson.
"Dying, Dr. Watson," said she. "For 3 days he has been sinking, and I doubt if he will last the day. He would not let me get a doctor." I was horrified, for I had heard nothing of his illness. I need not say that I rushed for my coat and my hat. As we drove back, I asked for the details. "There is little I can tell you, sir. He has been working at a case down at Rotherhithe, in an alley near the river, and he has brought this illness back with him. He took to his bed on Wednesday afternoon and has never moved since. For these 3 days, neither food nor drink has passed his lips." "Good God! Why did you not call in a doctor?" "He wouldn't have it, sir. You know how masterful he is. I didn't dare to disobey him." He was indeed a deplorable spectacle. Deplorable means terrible. In the dim light of a foggy November day, the sick room was a gloomy spot. But it was that gaunt means bony, wasted face staring at me from the bed, which sent a chill to my heart. His eyes had the brightness of fever. There was a hectic flush upon either cheek, and dark crusts clung to his lips. The thin hands upon the coverlet twitched incessantly. His voice was croaking and spasmodic. He lay listlessly as I entered the room, but the sight of me brought a gleam of recognition to his eyes. "Well, Watson, we seem to have fallen upon evil days," said he in a feeble voice, but with something of his old carelessness of manner. "My dear fellow," I cried, approaching him. "Stand back, stand right back," said he with the sharp imperiousness, bossiness, which I had associated only with moments of crisis. "If you approach me, Watson, I shall order you out of the house." "But why?" "It is for your own sake, Watson," he croaked. "For my sake? I know what is the matter with me. It is a coolie disease. Coolie disease stands for an infectious disease usually suffered by laborers from Sumatra. It is infallibly deadly, and it is horribly contagious. Infallibly means without doubt. He spoke now with a feverish energy. the long hands twitching and jerking as he motioned me away. Contagious by touch, Watson? That's it, by touch. Keep your distance and all is well. Holmes, said I, you are not yourself. A sick man is but a child, and so I will treat you, whether you like it or not. I will examine your symptoms and treat you for them. You mean well, Watson, said the sick man, with something between a sob and a groan. Shall I demonstrate your own ignorance? What do you know, pray, of Tapanuli fever? What do you know of the Black Formosa corruption? Tapanuli is an island north of Indonesia. Formosa, now known as Taiwan, is an island east of China. I have never heard of either. There are many problems of disease, many strange pathological possibilities in the East, Watson. He paused after each sentence to collect his failing strength. I have learned so much during some recent researches which have a medico-criminal aspect. It was in the course of them that I contracted this complaint. You can do nothing. Possibly not, but I happen to know that Dr. Ainstree, the greatest living authority upon tropical diseases, is now in London. All remonstrance is useless. Holmes, I am going this instant to fetch him. I turned resolutely to the door. You will seek help not from the man you mention, but from the one that I choose. By all means. You will now light the gas, Watson. Light the gas means light the gas lamp. But you will be very careful that not for one instant shall it be more than half on. I implore you to be careful. Watson, implore means request. Thank you. That is excellent. No, you need not draw the blind. Now, you will have the kindness to place some letters and papers upon this table within my reach. Thank you. Now, some of that litter from the mantelpiece. Excellent, Watson. There is a sugar tongs there. Kindly raise that small ivory box with its assistance. Place it here among the papers. Good. You can now go and fetch Mr. Culverton Smith of 13 Lower Burke Street. I never heard the name, said I. Possibly not, my good Watson. It may surprise you to know that the man upon earth who is best versed in this disease is not a medical man, but a planter. Mr. Culverton Smith is a well-known resident of Sumatra, now visiting London. An outbreak of the disease upon his plantation, which was distant from medical aid, caused him to study it himself, with some rather far-reaching consequences. If you could persuade him to come here and give us the benefit of his unique experience of this disease, the investigation of which has been his dearest hobby, I cannot doubt that he could help me. Instead of a world-renowned doctor, Holmes insisted that he be treated by a planter from Sumatra, Mr. Culverton Smith. He strongly believed that the planter, who had studied the disease in detail with good results, would be able to help him. You will tell him exactly how you have left me, said he. You will convey the very impression which is in your own mind. A dying man, a dying and delirious man. Indeed, I cannot think why the whole bed of the ocean is not one solid mass of oysters. So prolific the creatures seem. Ah, I am wondering. Strange how the brain controls the brain. What was I saying, Watson? Holmes is delirious, and thus he is speaking about irrelevant things. My directions for Mr. Culverton Smith. Ah, yes, I remember. My life depends upon it. Plead with him, Watson. There is no good feeling between us. His nephew, Watson, I had suspicions of foul play, and I allowed him to see it. The boy died horribly. He has a grudge against me. You will soften him, Watson. Beg him, pray him, get him here by any means. He can save me. Only he. Holmes further adds that Mr. Culverton Smith may not agree to come because he has a complaint against him. When Mr. Culverton Smith's young nephew had died, Holmes had pointed out that it was not a natural death. Mr. Smith had not liked this, and so he may not come readily. I will bring him in a cab, if I have to carry him down to it. You will do nothing of the sort. You will persuade him to come. And then you will return in front of him. Make any excuse so as not to come with him. Don't forget, Watson, you won't fail me. You never did fail me. Lower Burke Street proved to be a line of fine houses lying in the vague borderland between Notting Hill and Kensington. The particular one at which my cabman pulled up had an air of smug and demure respectability in its old-fashioned iron railings, its massive folding door, and its shining brass work. All was in keeping with a solemn butler who appeared framed in the pink radiance of a tinted electrical light behind him. Yes, Mr. Culverton Smith is in. Dr. Watson? Very good, sir. I will take up your card. My humble name and title did not appear to impress Mr. Culverton Smith. Through the half-open door, I heard a high, petulant, penetrating voice. Who is this person? What does he want? Dear me, Staples, how often have I said that I am not to be disturbed in my hours of study? I thought of Holmes tossing upon his bed of sickness and counting the minutes, perhaps until I could bring help to him. It was not a time to stand upon ceremony. To stand upon ceremony means to show proper manners. His life depended upon my promptness. Before the apologetic butler had delivered his message, I had pushed past him and was in the room. With a shrill cry of anger, a man rose from a reclining chair beside the fire. I saw a great yellow face, coarse-grained and greasy, with heavy double chin and two sullen, menacing grey eyes, which glared at me from under tufted brows. "What's this?" he cried in a high, screaming voice. "What is the meaning of this intrusion? Didn't I send you word that I would see you tomorrow morning?" "I am sorry," said I, "but the matter cannot be delayed. Mr. Sherlock Holmes..." The mention of my friend's name had an extraordinary effect upon the little man. The look of anger passed in an instant from his face. His features became tense and alert. "Have you come from Holmes?" he asked. "I have just left him." "What about Holmes? How is he?" "He is desperately ill. That is why I have come." "I'm sorry to hear this," said he. "I only know Mr. Holmes through some business dealings which we have had, but I have every respect for his talents and his character. He is an amateur of crime, as I am of disease. For him, the villain; for me, the microbe. It was on account of your special knowledge that Mr. Holmes desired to see you. He has a high opinion of you and thought that you were the one man in London who could help him." "Why?" he asked. "Why should Mr. Holmes think that I could help him in his trouble?" "Because of your knowledge of Eastern diseases." "But why should he think that this disease which he has contracted is Eastern?" "Because in some professional inquiry he has been working among Chinese sailors down in the docks." "Oh, that's it, is it?" said he. "I trust the matter is not so grave as you suppose. How long has he been ill?" "About 3 days." "Is he delirious?" "Occasionally." "Tut, tut. This sounds serious. It would be inhuman not to answer his call. I very much resent any interruption to my work, Dr. Watson, but this case is certainly exceptional. I will come with you at once." I remembered Holmes' injunction. Injunction means order or instruction. "I have another appointment," said I. "Very good. I will go alone. I have a note of Mr. Holmes' address. You can rely upon my being there within half an hour at most." It was with a sinking heart that I re-entered Holmes' bedroom. For all that I knew, the worst might have happened in my absence. To my enormous relief, he had improved greatly in the interval. "Well, did you see him, Watson?" "Yes, he is coming. I told him about the Chinese in the East End." "Exactly. Well, Watson, you have done all that a good friend could. You can now disappear from the scene." "I must wait and hear his opinion, Holmes." "Of course you must. But I have reasons to suppose that this opinion would be very much more frank and valuable if he imagines that we are alone. There is just room behind the head of my bed, Watson." From the hiding place into which I had been so swiftly hustled, I heard the footfalls upon the stair, with the opening and the closing of the bedroom door. Then, to my surprise, there came a long silence, broken only by the heavy breathings and gaspings of the sick man. I could imagine that our visitor was standing by the bedside and looking down at the sufferer. At last, that strange hush was broken. "Holmes," he cried, in the insistent tone of one who awakens a sleeper. "Can't you hear me, Holmes?" There was a rustling, as if he had shaken the sick man roughly by the shoulder. "Is that you, Mr. Smith?" Holmes whispered. "I hardly dared hope that you would come." The other laughed. "I should imagine not," he said. "And yet, you see, I am here. coals of fire. Holmes, coals of fire. Coals of fire means he has rushed hurriedly as though he is standing on coals of fire. It is very good of you, very noble of you. I appreciate your special knowledge. Our visitor sniggered. You do? You are fortunately the only man in London who does. Do you know what is the matter with you? The same, said Holmes. Ah, you recognize the symptoms. Only too well. Well, I shouldn't be surprised, Holmes. I shouldn't be surprised if it were the same. A bad lookout for you if it is. Poor Victor was a dead man on the 4th day. A strong, hearty young fellow. It was certainly, as you said, very surprising that he should have contracted an out-of-the-way Asiatic disease in the heart of London. A disease, too, of which I had made such a very special study. Singular coincidence, Holmes. Singular means unique or unusual. Very smart of you to notice it, but rather uncharitable to suggest that it was cause and effect. Holmes had indirectly accused that Mr. Smith had caused this disease in his nephew, and the effect was the death of Victor. I knew that you did it. Oh, you did you? Well, you couldn't prove it, anyhow. But what do you think of yourself spreading reports about me like that, and then crawling to me for help the moment you are in trouble? What sort of a game is that, eh? When Mr. Culverton Smith comes, far from showing any sympathy for Holmes, he reminds him that he had accused him of causing his nephew, Victor's, death. Victor had died of a tropical disease in the heart of London, which was unusual. Now he mocks at Holmes for seeking his help. He says Holmes has no evidence to prove that he had any hand in Victor's death. I heard the rasping, labored breathing of the sick man. Give me the water, he gasped. You're precious near your end, my friend. But I don't want you to go till I have had a word with you. That's why I give you water. There. Don't slop it about. Slop means spill and create a mess. That's right. Can you understand what I say? Holmes groaned. Do what you can for me. Let bygones be bygones, he whispered. I'll put the words out of my head. I swear I will. Only cure me, and I'll forget it. Bygones be bygones means forget old quarrels. Forget what? Well, about Victor Savage's death. You as good as admitted just now that you had done it. I'll forget it. You can forget it or remember it just as you like. I don't see you in the witness box. Quite another shaped box, my good Holmes. I assure you. Mr. Smith means that he sees Holmes in a coffin instead of a witness box. It matters nothing to me that you should know how my nephew died. It's not him we are talking about. It's you. You are proud of your brains, Holmes. Are you not? Think yourself smart, don't you? You came across someone who was smarter this time. Now, cast your mind back, Holmes. Cast your mind back means recall. Can you think of no other way you could have got this thing? I can't think. My mind is gone. For heaven's sake, help me. Yes, I will help you. I'll help you to understand just where you are and how you got there. I'd like you to know before you die. Give me something to ease my pain. Painful, is it? Yes, the coolies used to do some squealing towards the end. Now, it is evident to the reader that Holmes is pretending to be sick in order to get Mr. Smith to confess his involvement in Victor's death. Listen now, can you remember any unusual incident in your life just about the time your symptoms began? No, nothing. Think again. I'm too ill to think. Well then, I'll help you. Did anything come by post? By post? A box by chance? I'm fainting. I'm gone. Listen, Holmes. There was a sound as if he was shaking the dying man. And it was all that I could do to hold myself quiet in my hiding place. You must hear me. You shall hear me. Do you remember a box? An ivory box? It came on Wednesday. You opened it. Do you remember? Yes, I opened it. There was a sharp spring inside. Some joke. It was no joke, as you will find to your cost. You fool. You would have it, and you have got it. Who asked you to cross my path? If you had left me alone, I would not have hurt you. I remember, Holmes gasped. The spring. It drew blood. This box. This. On the table. The very one, by George. By George is a phrase meaning indeed. And it may as well leave the room in my pocket. There goes your last shred of evidence. But you have the truth now, Holmes, and you can die with the knowledge that I killed you. You knew too much of the fate of Victor Savage, so I have sent you to share it. You are very near your end, Holmes. I will sit here and I will watch you die. Holmes' voice had sunk to an almost inaudible whisper. What is that? Said Smith. Turn up the gas? Ah, the shadows begin to fall. Do they? Yes, I will turn it up, that I may see you the better. He crossed the room and the light suddenly brightened. Is there any other little service that I can do you, my friend? A match and a cigarette. I nearly called out in my joy and my amazement. Holmes was speaking in his natural voice, a little weak, perhaps, but the very voice I knew. There was a long pause, and I felt that Culverton Smith was standing in silent amazement looking down at his companion. What's the meaning of this? I heard him say, at last, in a dry, rasping tone. The best way of successfully acting a part is to be it, said Holmes. I give you my word that for 3 days I have tasted neither food nor drink until you were good enough to pour me out that glass of water. There were footfalls outside. The door opened and Inspector Morton appeared. All is in order, and this is your man, said Holmes. The officer gave the usual cautions. I arrest you on the charge of the murder of one Victor Savage, he concluded. And you might add of the attempted murder of one Sherlock Holmes, remarked my friend with a chuckle. To save an invalid trouble, Inspector, Mr. Culverton Smith was good enough to give our signal by turning up the gas. Invalid, sick person. By the way, the prisoner has a small box in the right-hand pocket of his coat, which it would be as well to remove. Thank you. I would handle it gingerly, cautiously, if I were you. Put it down here. It may play its part in the trial. There was a sudden rush and a scuffle, followed by the clash of iron. Clash of iron here stands for the sound of handcuffs and a cry of pain. You'll only get yourself hurt, said the inspector. Stand still, will you? There was the click of the closing handcuffs. Good heavens, cried Holmes. I had totally forgotten him. My dear Watson, I owe you 1,000 apologies. To think that I should have overlooked you. I need not introduce you to Mr. Culverton Smith, since I understand that you met somewhat earlier in the evening. Have you the cab below? I will follow you when I am dressed. In a very clever manner, Mr. Holmes leads the culprit to make a confession to a murder which otherwise could not have been proved.